listening to the Booktrospective Podcast, a podcast for all types of books. And even though we read all types of books across all different types of genres, we want to give a disclaimer. Many of our books and a lot of our content sometimes is intended for mature audiences. And we don't believe in censorship, but we do want our listeners to have the opportunity to decide if our episode or podcast is good for them. So with that, let's get into the episode.
Before this episode starts, I know that I called one of the brothers Theon, but I was actually just reading, and it's Theon with an F, so I apologize. Just know that going through the episode.
Hey, it's Dominice.
And Keely.
And you are listening to Booktrospective. And this week we are doing Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver.
Yep.
It's just her.
Yes.
She has a book with somebody else.
Yeah,
Sierra
she
Simone.
does. Is
it?
it?
I think it is. I was like, is this that book or was that just Brynne Weaver? I think she does, which I kind of want to read that. But anywho, nevertheless. Keely, how's your week?
My week has been busy.
Good.
Planning for, well.
Oh, different busy.
Yeah, different busy. Different busy. Planning for the trip busy.
So excited.
I'm so excited about it. I found out that one of the friends I made last year is going again this year, so I'm super excited. And then one of the bookstores that I'm mutuals with on TikTok is going as well, and they're from Zionsville.
Cool.
So another Hoosier bookseller, so I'm excited about that. But
I need to send you some stickers. I got some.
Yes.
Just stick them. I got a bunch in my purse. I'm like, here, you can just have this. If you are in New Orleans and you see random Booktrospective stickers, that's your sign that if you're not already following us, you need to. So
every stop that I take, I'm going
like
to
the
put
gas
some.
station. Boop.
Yep.
Stick it in the stall. Just stick it on there. Somebody's in there like, here you go. Washing your hands.
Need something to do while you're taking a poo.
Here you go. We're perfect poo material. My week's been crazy too. I'm like trying to get my life back together still. I know I kept saying like I just had to get to June, and now it's June, and June is super messy. I did 3 CPR classes. I teach CPR and I don't like love it. It's just a lot because like I have to take all my like stuff out and like pack it back up, and like people don't love doing CPR classes. So like I did 3 of them this week. So and I did 2 yesterday. Like
oh wow.
Yeah. So it has been a very long week, and then someone called today and was like, "Hey, don't you do CPR on first day? Like my whole company needs it." Like I'm very grateful and thankful, but it's just a lot. And then like. My kids went to the eye doctor on Monday. Then they had their annual appointments yesterday. My pool is ready, so that's good. The kids got in today, and they swam. So
I'll be sending Peyton
yep,
your way.
send her on over so she can come when you guys get back. But yeah, just been like busy. So I was like this weekend, my friends were like, "Can we go to this thing?" I said no. I need to clean my house. I need to like clean my garage. I need to take care of my life. I'm trying to get it together before my next trip at the end of June. So. Adulting.
Well, I completely forgot until just now. Speaking of, we were talking about the doctor earlier. Kinley also had an appointment today.
Oh yeah.
So, baby's weighing in at 7 pounds 2 ounces, and they're inducing her on Tuesday while I'm gone.
No.
So I'm so upset. But I'm like, Thursday when I come home, I'm driving straight to her house.
Yeah.
And
like, can you guys just do it on Thursday? Like, what's 2 more days?
Right.
Well, should be like right at 40 weeks or not even 39 or something.
Right at, I believe.
They could wait 2 days. Tell her to ask them to wait 2 days.
But if something doesn't happen before,
you got all weekend.
Right. My aunt. It's a ongoing like family thing. It's weird. I guess it is. I don't know. My aunt makes homemade chicken and noodles.
Mm-hmm.
Like the egg noodles, like they're so good. But my cousin, she went into labor after eating the noodles, and then my other cousin did as well after eating the noodles. So we say that it's her magic noodles, and hopefully Kinley goes into labor before I leave.
Yeah. So the noodles, drive over some speed bumps, take her on long walks, eat something hot. I don't know. She needs a ball, like the peanut ball. I like the peanut ball because it goes between you could put a regular ball between your legs too. But I don't know. Inducing can be long though, so you never know. They might not like it might. It just, I don't know. It depends. So hopefully you don't. Oh, that stinks. They suck. Boo. Mm-hmm. But I guess next time we record, then she'll have a niece. So that'll be fun. That's the one thing. I'm not an aunt to anyone, so I don't have that luxury yet. But just a mom. But yeah, okay. Well, that is. I just wanted to say this too before we get started. So if you know anything about Anchor podcast, that was our host for our podcast. But they like are just like basically getting rid of it. Like it's like, oh, you can still post here, but you can't edit online or in the app. The app's going away. Like you need to download all your files, like all this stuff. And I was like, yeah, no. So I switched us over to, it's called Podbean. And so Spotify's down right now because like it has to be a certain type of file, and I didn't realize that. So for it to publish all of the old episodes, even though they were already on Spotify. But right now we are on Apple still, and then we're actually on YouTube. I was going to try to do live videos, and we've been recording, but it wasn't doing that. But actually we could just push all of our episodes over to YouTube, and I didn't know that. So now all of our episodes are on YouTube under Retrospective. So hopefully this will actually be a lot better, because Anchor, like, it's free, and, you get what you pay for. Podbean's not a lot, but yeah, so I'm like, whatever. So we're making some changes, so if you're like, what happened? I listened on Spotify. Why are you not on Spotify? Hopefully next week we are on Spotify again. So I'm hoping to fix that. But, all right.
Before, one and a half, two more things. So I just wanted to show you the arc of the Blonde Dice first.
You've been reading already?
Not yet. I'm going to start it here soon.
It looks so nice.
Yes. I am finishing House of whatever, the last...
Flame and Shadow.
Yeah, that one right now. And then I'm going to read that. But have you read Children of Blood and Bone?
No, but I hear people talking about it.
So they had a special edition paperback.
Ooh, it's
and I was like,
cute.
ooh, I'm gonna get me one. So yeah, I just wanted to show you those books.
Those are super cute. Oh, that's cute, and I like that one. I liked the cover before. I guess. Oh, also, we're talking today. Whatever. I am like really pushing on. Actually, no, I'll take that back because Keely also is really pushing on TikTok. We're pushing the podcast and the bookstore really heavily. So if for some reason you're sitting here and you have a TikTok, if you don't have a TikTok, go make one. There's no excuses. If you don't have a TikTok, go make one. If you do have one and you're not following us, get over there because we're trying to get to 1,000 followers.
There's no excuse not to be following us.
No excuses. Excuses. So make sure you're following us. I've been trying to post daily, like actual like me talking, and then also our normal other stuff. So we're trying to get to 1,000 at least. We can always go past that so that we can go live, and then hopefully we'll do like another giveaway. So if you want us to do a giveaway, go follow us, and then make all of your friends and all the people that live in your household and all of your family members also follow us on TikTok and all the other socials. But TikTok's our focus right now. So there's that. Okay. All right, so the blurb.
The blurb is ready.
Okay.
Every serial killer needs a friend. Every game must have a winner. When a chance encounter sparks an unlikely bond between rival murderers, Sloane and Rowan, the two find something elusive. The friendship of a like-minded, pitch-black soul. From small-town West Virginia to upscale California, from downtown Boston to rural Texas, the two hunters collide in an annual game of blood and suffering, one that pits them against the most dangerous monsters in the country. But as their friendship develops into something more, the relentless ghosts left in their wake are only a few steps behind, ready to claim more than just their newfound love. Can Rowan and Sloane dig themselves out of a game of graves, or have they finally met their match?
Okay, so Butcher and Blackbird. So, like, I kind of wrote down what the warning was from the author. Also, I wanted to make a quick note. So, I audiobooked this, I audiobook. The narrator for Rowan had, like, some legal issues and all of that. And, like, Brynne Weaver, that's her name, right?
Yeah.
Or Weaver, I'm like, what is her name? Okay, so the author is aware. And it's kind of, I'm not here to speculate, but I'm like, oh, he really is a good narrator. So it's like, I'm curious to like see who does the next book. He probably will not be. And like, whatever he did or did not do is not tied in any way, shape, or form to the author or anybody else in connection with this book. But I just want to make that note because I know some people, decide to not listen anymore or listen to that book or whatever out of support. And whatever you choose to do, it's your prerogative. I just wanted to make that note. So this book is hot. As a matter of fact, what word do you want to use to describe?
Unhinged.
Ah, that's a good one. I was actually going to say messy, like in a different kind of way. It's like comical. It is violent. It is sexy.
Funny.
It is funny. It is a lot. This might be like one of the smuttier books that we've done. I don't know. And I always vary on how much I say, but just be warned of that. So this book follows 2 serial killers, which is so fun. As a true crime person, I love to get into the mind of a serial killer. So we are following Sloane, who is known as the Orb Weaver, and Rowan, who is known as the Butcher of Boston. And they run into each other, trying to chase after the same person. And from there, this book is a very long span. It's the span of 4 years in this book. So over the next 4 years, they are just constantly actually they're not running into each other because they start playing this game where they have a target each year, who kills them first, blah, 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 blah. They both have very dark backstories, which has led them to this serial killer life. Their close loved ones know that they are in this life, but they also have day jobs. Rowan is a restaurant owner and chef. And Sloane is a researcher. She's very smart. Big brain. And I mean, it's a love story. So they're fighting feelings. These are not, these are atypical people in general. So their socialization skills are a little different. So that's probably why it took them 4 years. But it's basically, we're all heading towards the point of them becoming together. Of course, there's always a third act problem that we're going to run into. But that's the gist of this book. But it's so funny, so witty. Their banter is very good. It is smutty, but it's not until the end. A lot of the other stuff is just the murder. So that's a lot of leading up. There's really 3, I mean, I don't know, there's more than 3 sex scenes, but they're all at the end. That's kind of my general spoiler free summary. I will say warnings. I'm sure there's actual triggers on the site, but at the beginning of the book, they say to read responsibly. Some of the triggers include eyeballs, eye sockets, amateur surgery, skin ornaments, chainsaws, axes, knives, scalpels, sharp objects, cannibalism, both accidental and purposeful, lobotomized servant, ill use of a corpse, detailed sex scenes including rough sex, praise kink, adult toys, choking, and dom sub scenarios. So that's already enough. So if you don't like a lot of smut, if you don't like a lot of gore, this probably is not going to be the book for you, but it really does have a lot of funny aspects. There is a plot-ish in there. So if you don't want to be spoiled, this is your notice to pause here and come back. If not, we're going to go ahead and get started. Also, because I always forget, this is in dual POV. So we open with Sloane, and we learn that she is a serial killer who kills serial killers.
Very Dexter-like.
Yeah, and I mean, she's a vigilante. We're down with the vigilantes. But unfortunately, she has found herself locked in a cage of a dead man. She has been in this cage for 3 days in Louisiana, very hot, very stinky, with a dead body on the outside of the cage. And she literally is looking at this body, and the stomach is moving because he is liquefying and the bugs are eating him and he's rotting and stinks. And she's like, bodies don't bother me, but I like a fresh body. And the man's name is Albert that's dead. And she's like, he literally splits open and full of maggots. And I would have been vomiting everywhere. I would be so sick. So sick. So she basically starts humming and singing the song. And then all of a sudden a man is like, hi, what's your name? And she's like, I'm sorry, what? And we learned that the man that she killed, his name is Albert, also known as the Beast of the Bayou. But the man that comes in is stunning, and he has an Irish accent, which I love to hear Irish people say 3, churchy tree. On the cruise I went on the night when one of the game host people, she was Irish. I love to hear them talk, and so it's so cute. Anyways, but this man is stunning, and he's like, you know, you're not Albert's usual type. You're too old. And like we learn that she's 23. I don't know. Do we ever learn how old Rowan is? I don't know that we do.
Sure.
This man is Rowan, we will learn. And she asks, like, how do you know that? And he says, I make it my business to know. And he lets her know, like, I'm Rowan, which I listened to this in the audiobook and I listened to it on very fast speed. And I was like, when we get to his brother's name, I'm like, I think that's what it is. You're going to have to confirm. Because I was like, what is his name? Like, I went back multiple times. I had to slow it down. Rowan. Okay. It's like Ron. It sounds like Ron on the audiobook. So Rowan, and he goes and like shakes her hand through the cage. He says he's the Boston Butcher, the Massacre of Mass, the ghost of the East Coast. And she's like, yeah, never heard of you. Never heard of you. But we learn that he's actually just like her. He's a serial killer who kills serial killers. And he says like, well, gotta go. You know, you hang tight. And she's like, okay, wait, please. Because she's like, he wants to know her name. And she's like, yeah, buddy, I'm not talking to you. But she's like, fine, like, please, I'm Sloane. And she's like, I'm the Orb Weaver. And he's like, super excited. Like, yes, I knew they were wrong because obviously the police and everybody assumed that this is like a man that's doing this. I knew this, like, he's like, I knew you were a woman. And he's like, oh, I really like what you do with the eyeballs. I'm a fan. And he's like, how did you end up in the cage? And Albert is on the outside of it. And he's like, you know, you should go to lunch with me. And she's like, I'm literally disgusting. Why would you want to go to lunch with me? And he ends up finding the key and lets her out. And he's like, you can shower. We're going to burn the house down. And he starts calling her Blackbird because Sloane is like very like raven dark hair. And so they call her Blackbird. And switch over to Rowan. They go to lunch and he like cannot believe he's there with her. She's so beautiful. But she's like super flighty, like, and she looks like pale, like she's not well. And he's like ogling her and she tells him like basically Albert kicked her into the cage as she was stabbing him in the neck. And that's how she ended up in the cage. And he asked like, why didn't you pick like a name with Blackbird since you look like one? And the song that she had been singing or whatever is about a blackbird or something like that. And she's like, that's like a personal name for me. Orb Weaver is for them, like the world. And she asks like, why are you here? And he says, I came to kill Albert. And she says like, well, you're pretty far from Boston. And he realizes that she does know who he is because, you know, she pretended that she didn't. And she says like, he's like, oh, you're a fan. And she's like, no, I'm not. But she blushes and she says like, you're the worst. Take me back to the cage. And he pretends like he's going to, but he says like, oh, you'll love me one day. So he asks like, does she take out their eyes? Like, because the eyes are the window to the soul. And she's like, no, because if you mess with a raven, they'll pluck your eyes out, basically. And he wants to get to know her. So they talk about someone that he's killed, and like we learn like she actually wanted to kill that person. And she says his bodies were already mapped into her web. So she's an orb weaver. So the FBI cannot figure this out, but she's actually like after she kills them, she weaves a web out of their skin and leaves clues in the web for the people that the killer has killed. But, like, the FBI is retarded. They can't figure it out. So, I wouldn't be able to figure it out either, though. I would be lost. Like, what am I looking at? But anyway, so Rowan's noticed that, you know, he can tell she wants to leave. And so he's like, let's play a game. Do you want to play a game? So we fast forward to a year later, and we're with Sloane. And she is fighting the urge, like, to kill someone, basically. Because, like, that's really the only thing that, like, cures this, like, need in her. But she's waiting on a text from Rowan, and she has a man tied down, actually. And so we learn that they're still going to do their game, and she has no idea, like, what the end game is for it, but whatever. So she gets a message from her friend, which is her only friend and best friend, Lark. And Lark is calling to see if the butcher has texted her yet, because they're waiting on this, like, text. And Sloane tells Lark that, you know, this is reckless, it's impulsive, and Lark is like, no, like, it's fun, you should do it. And Sloane says, I feel like something is missing, and Lark asks, is it because, like, the FBI can't figure out your clues? And she says, no, I'll send them a letter if they don't. And I'm like, don't BTK it. Like, don't mess it up.
Right.
Don't mess it up. But Sloane tells Lark that she thinks like Rowan like feels the same, like they have that need, and that the kills aren't really like relieving the itch like they used to. It's just like gets deeper and deeper. So Lark asks like, are you spiraling? And Sloane says, no, I'm just ready to get this competition started. And meanwhile, Sloane snaps at her victim because he will not shut up. And his name is Michael. And so she starts cutting on him because Michael talks to underage boys on the internet. And she says, I'm going to take your voice first and then your fingers. So she hangs up with Lark and she starts cutting out the vocal cord. And she gets a text from Rowan. And Rowan says that his brother, Lachlan, is going to like basically draw a target from a hat. They'll both have 7 days to find and kill the target. And this target is going to be in West Virginia. And Locke, I'm going to call him Locke. I'm not going to say Locke all the time. Says, like, good luck, eyeball spider lady. So she kills Michael and she's like, it's game night. Like, I got to get started. And did you listen to the audiobook? They're so good. Like, it's so cute. So we switch over to Rowan, and he's, like, in his room or in his apartment with his brother. So Lachlan is his older brother, and he has a younger brother. Is his name Theon?
I think so.
Like, Theon, you didn't watch Game of Thrones, did you?
No.
Like, Theon Greyjoy. That's what, when it's on the audiobook, it's like, Theon. Like, it's so quick. And I'm like, I think it's Theon, which is kind of like, and that makes sense. And so if you're a Game of Thrones person, you know who I'm talking about, okay? So that's the only thing that helped me out. So anyway, so Rowan's the middle child. And his younger brother is, like, in town, but he actually is a doctor that lives in Nebraska. And he's not a murderer. but Rowan and Locke are murderers. They just are. But they're, like, hanging out or whatever. He's getting ready for this trip. And Sloane texts him saying, like, I'm getting ready to take off on my flight. And she's like, I got a head start or whatever. And his brothers notice, like, and they're like, oh, you texting the spider lady? Like, whatever. And we learned that Lachlan is the older brother, and he also is a murderer, but, like, he also has a day job. So by day, he, like, works with leather. By night, he is a murderer. Locke is like, oh, she's hot or whatever. He's like, what do I call her? And Rowan just says, fuck off. And he's like, oh, great. Next time I see her, I'll be like, hey, fuck off. Like, whatever. So, his younger brother, Theon, is like, I think this is dangerous. Like, I don't know if you should go meet her. She's a murderer. You only met her once a year ago. But, like, Rowan's like, whatever, I'm going. So we go back over to Sloane, and she is, like, trying to, like, reconsider her decisions. Like, this is stupid. I shouldn't meet him. And he shows up, and she's trying to figure out how he got here so fast. Because he also has already, like, been in his hotel room. His hotel room is right next to her hotel room. And, like, where did you come from? So he's like, yeah, I make sure our hotel rooms are right next door to each other. And he offers her some wine. And she's like, I don't want your man pox. Like, I'm good. But she has, like, her Kindle or whatever. And he snatches it. And
I love this part.
he looks at it and she's like, what are you reading? And she's like, oh, it's dragon porn. And he's like, good, I need entertainment. And he tells her, because she has, like, freckles. He's like, oh, I thought you got, like, your freckles from snatching souls. And, like, I don't know. They're just, like, being silly goofy. So she asks, like, who set all this up? And he tells her about his brother, which was Locke. And he's, like, really vague about him. She doesn't get a lot of details. But this is when Rowan tells Sloane, like, he runs his own kitchen back in Boston. He's actually the owner of a restaurant, and it's called 3 in Coach. And he named it that way because it's, like, for when him and his brothers moved to America. They were 3 in Coach on the plane. So that's why he named it that way. So he's still trying to sell her e-reader, and he's like, I need entertainment. And a man comes up to them in the lobby, and his name is Francis. And, like, this is their target. I already knew this was, but we learned that this is their target. And, like, no one is staying in this hotel. Like, red flag. There's not a soul there. If I go anywhere and there's not a soul there, I'm leaving.
Absolutely.
I'm not staying.
Right around.
Me and my, like, mom, like, we went to Kings Island or somewhere one time, and we stopped at this restaurant, and there was, like, nobody there. And it was so weird, and we were like, we literally got up and left, and, like, later we drove by, and there were people there, but we were like, something's wrong. Like, we're leaving. Like, I'm out of there. No. But anyway, so he's like, he comes up, and he's like, oh, I just wanted to get my cat, Winston, like Winston Churchill. Or whatever, and he's like, oh, you guys are the only guests tonight. She's like, yeah. Sounds like we're on our annual hiking trip, and he's like, well, you should be careful. People go missing. And I was like, I bet they do. So they go to their rooms, and Rowan texts her and is like, don't let the bed bugs bite because this place looks like it has bed bugs. And I'm like, you couldn't stay somewhere else? Like, I'm not staying somewhere like that. So over to Rowan. It's been a couple of days, and neither of them have figured out the killer yet. But he goes to her room the next night, and she always stares at him, and he says, like, if you let me in your room, I'll tell you about the scar you always stare at. And she gets kind of flustered, and she's like, I'm a serial killer, like, you shouldn't come in my room. Like, what? And she goes to, like, leave with her bag because she's, like, going out somewhere, and she's like, I have somewhere to be. And he's like, what do you mean you have somewhere to be? We're in West Virginia. Where are you going? Also, I'm not staying in West Virginia. There's that. That's one state I'm not making any stops in. Just so you know. No offense to any West Virginia listeners, but I'm not stopping in your state. Anywho, so he notices, like, also, like, Sloane's a little more dressed up. They've been there for 3 days. He's like, are you going on a date? And she's like, not per se. And he's like, okay, well, I need to go. Like, you need protection. And she's like, you can't come, but I'll fill you in. And then she leaves. And so he's, like, worried, concerned, jealous. And he follows her, but she's already gone. And he's like, I can't believe that I'm stressed out about the orb weaver being safe. And so she texts him and says, like, I'm fine, don't wait up. So 3 hours later, he hears her come in her room and like wonder like, what is she doing? And did she hook up with this guy? And then he hears music and her singing, and he's like literally screaming into his pillow like, wah! Like whatever. So he's being a creep, and he goes up to the wall and he starts listening to her. He like hears, basically she gets her vibrator out, he hears it, and he's like immediately turned on, and she's moaning his name, and like he goes to like, he's like, okay, I'm disgusting. Like he goes to pull away from the wall, and he hears another groan, but like that doesn't sound like Sloane, so he starts following the sound, and this might be my favorite scene in this whole book. He hears it like in the wall near a portrait, so he like aims at the wall with like, I think it's like a chair or something, and he's like, there's a painting, and he's gonna like hit the wall, and the painting's eyes open, and it goes, oh shit, and there's a person, and they run.
That is like a nightmare.
Absolutely.
Like,
I'm going to be checking all my like pictures, like knocking them off the wall and stuff. Like, what is going, could you imagine? That is some Scooby-Doo shit. You're like in there, right? And the eyeballs, and then it's just like blank, he was like, it was blank black sockets. Like, what? So there's like a room in the wall, so he's like in there, and Sloane like, so then Sloane sees him through the wall and is like shrieking, yelling, and she's like pissed off, like, you're watching me? And he's like, no, there's a man in the wall. And she's like, yeah, I know, you're in the wall. And he's like, no, not me, another man. So he tells her that there's a man in the wall and there's a hidden room. And so she starts smiling and she goes, I knew it. So she heads downstairs and she's like, it's Francis. Like she's like, I knew. And Sloane always figures it out. Like she's like, that's the killer. So Rowan's like, oh, dumbass. Like he's the target. So they like start heading out to the caretaker's house. And we learn that she had gone on a date with Francis. Like, gross. Vomit. So we're still with Rowan, and Sloane starts like running ahead, and he's like tackling her because he's like, okay, so now it's a competition. So like they're like racing, and she's like, he's mine, but he like throws her to the ground and runs ahead, and they hear an engine cut on. So Francis is literally running. So Rowan jumps on the hood of the car and just starts like smashing and pummeling the windshield. And Sloane like rushes up, but he pushes her away and looks at her and is like very serious, like, mine. And she's like, oh, okay, like something's off. So he's like, stay here, and he like lets go of her. And so Francis is like running, like limping from the vehicle, and Rowan is like, I'm gonna love this. And like he grabs Francis by this orange or pink tie or whatever that he wears, and it comes off, and he's like, literally a freaking clip-on tie. What kind of grown-ass man are you? And like basically Rowan's pissed because he like is like, you were gonna kill Sloane, like, and he's like, she's mine, basically. And Francis says, I wasn't gonna hurt her, I was just watching. And Rowan says, I don't believe you, like this isn't your first time. And Francis admits like, no, like he's killed people. And that's when Rowan says like, Sloane is mine, and he just pummels Francis to death. And he looks for Sloane when he's done because he's like bloody and stuff, and then he starts freaking out like, oh my god, I scared her off. He literally starts breaking down and is like, Sloane, like, oh, it's so sad. And so she comes out of like the like dark, and she's like, I'm here. And she's like, are you okay? And she tells him that Francis looks like a Picasso, like his like ears to one side, his like eyes all messed up. And Rowan literally can't speak, and she says like, I didn't think I'd see the day that you like shut up, basically. And he asks if she's okay, and she says yes. She says, we need to get you cleaned up. So they go into the house, and she bandages him. And that's when he tells her about his scar. He says his father gave him that scar on his lip. He's like slapped him in the face with with a plate. And he says that night him and his brother Lachlan killed him. And we learned that his mom also is dead. She died giving birth to Theon. And Sloane says she's sorry, and he says, don't be, because I wouldn't be where I am now, and I have no regrets. Going over to Sloane, it's 6 months ahead now, and it's been 6 months since they last saw each other, and they like text back and forth, and Rowan says like, you know, I won, basically. And he keeps saying that whole thing like, you'll love me one day. So she had heard what he said to Francis about like her being his, basically, and we learned that she took the cat with her when she left. So she took Winston. And so she's talking to Lark, telling Lark about how Rowan pummeled this man, and Lark is like, was it hot? Like, the important questions here, ladies and gents. And Sloane's like, I mean, yeah, but like it was like raw, like not controlled. And we learned that Lark's family actually took Sloane in at some point, and that's why they're so close. So Sloane admits that she almost did leave Rowan that night, like he thought she was, and she feels bad because she knows that he never would have left her. So she like remembers him like calling her name and how broken he sounded. And Lark complains like, because Lark like does music, so she's traveling around and she's like, God, I'm in a dry spell. She's like, all the boys on this tour are so emo, and I just want somebody to like choke me and slam me and throw me around. And they just want to like cry on my pillow. But Lark tells Sloane that she should go to see Rowan and like break her dry spell. And Sloane admits, like, she's actually scared of, like, having feelings for him. And she said, like, basically, like, she's been thinking about him for, like, months now. And what we learn is that she decides to go. So 3 months later, she's standing across the street from his restaurant, and she's been stalking it. So she decides to go in. She sits down by herself. And the waitress comes and she's like, dang, like all the like waitresses and staff in here are like super beautiful. And she thinks like Rowan probably isn't even here, but she knows he is because she hacked into the system and has been watching him. So her food comes out and she notices a large group of men coming in, and one of them looks a lot like Rowan, which I assume was Lachlan. Really huge tattooed rings like on his fingers. I was like, hubba hubba. So she like asked for a box to go, and Lachlan locks eyes with her like across the restaurant, and he smiles like he knows who this is. So she like draws this picture of a raven, leaves it, and then gets up to run. But as she's running out, she hears someone say Blackbird, and she's like, oh shit. So Locke smirks at her, and Rowan like is looking so good, and he asks like the waitress whose name is Jenna. He's like, what the fuck? Like, what happened? And then like the other girl who's cleaned the table, he's like, stop cleaning that table, like don't clean it off. And he asks, like, what are you doing here? And Sloane's like, eating. And she starts stuttering, and he tells her, like, just stay, like, let's sit in the booth. And she doesn't want to because she left the picture there. And she's like, that is so cringy. And she's trying to run out, but Locke gets in her way, so now she can't leave. And Rowan says, like, I was beginning to think you were Locke says, I was beginning to think you were a figment of my brother's imagination. And Rowan turns to the girl, like, that's cleaning the table and says, if you clean that table, I will rip your hands off and use them to wipe my ass until the day that I die. And he tells everybody to sit down. And so then, like, they sit down, but then this woman comes in named Anna, and she comes right up to Rowan, hugs him, and he, like, really isn't giving her any attention. And he's like, yeah, this is my friend, Anna. But, like, of course, Sloane immediately thinks, like, this is more than a friend. And she's like, I've got to go. And Rowan looks super desperate, but she leaves. And she, like, walks for, like, miles, crying, embarrassed. And she books a flight home and just, like, goes home and goes to sleep. And Rowan texts her, like, asking if they can talk. And she's like, later. And then, like, days start going by. And he's like, did you make it home okay? And at this point, it's been 10 days and they're barely talking. And he texts and says, like, he wished he would have stayed. And she shuts the phone off because, like, revenge is easy, but everything else is hard. Go back to Rowan. He is now stalking her house. So he's across the street from her house, and he is sending a kid over with a delivery. So he's been giving this kid $50. He goes over there, drops off groceries, and doesn't answer any of Sloane's questions. And he, like, checks every time, like, did you answer any questions? And the kid's like, no. So it's been a week since he said that he had wished he had stayed, and it's been 3 weeks since everything happened in Boston. Rowan saw how, like, hurt Sloane looked when she left, but she never gave him a chance to explain that, like, literally this girl's just my friend. So Sloane texts him, like, did you have pasta delivered to my house? And he's like, yeah, I'm going to tell you what to cook. So she calls asking, like, what are you doing? And he says, put the phone on speaker, we're cooking together. He says, you're my friend, sometimes my best friend. And I was like, oh, right. And Sloane says, you hardly even know me. And he says, I bet I know your darkest parts. And he's thinking of, like, actually being in the kitchen with her and how much he wants her and, like, how good she probably looks cooking. And she tells him, like, I was actually in Boston for an investigation meeting. And he asked her about her drawing, and she admits that she used to love drawing and even sculpting, but something in her past has made her not like it anymore. And he tells her, like, he always wanted to be a chef, and that he used to cook for his brothers when they were, like, alone in a dark, empty house, and that his littlest brother was very picky, so he had to get creative. And then sometimes it served as a barrier between him and his dad because his dad wouldn't beat him because he needed him to cook. So they just talk, and the next day, like, they do it again, and he brings salad this time so he can eat, like, while she's eating. And he learns, like, she doesn't have any siblings, she isn't really close with her parents. And then the third day, he teaches her how to make steak. And then on the fourth day, he waits outside, but he doesn't send anything. And he watches her, like, come out expecting to find something and go back in. And she texts him, but he is heading to the airport. And he doesn't look at the text because he knows, like, he'll turn around and go back. So he turns his phone off until he gets all the way home. And she had texted him saying that she missed him today. And he texts her back and says, I missed you too. And when she's in town again, they should cook together. And she responds saying that she'd like that. So we go to Sloane, and she is having dinner with a man named Thorsten because they are on their next mission. So it's been a year since the whole West Virginia thing. And it's been a couple weeks since, like, he stalked her house. And so Rowan shows up, and she's pissed off because Rowan literally never does any research. He just follows Sloane and, like, gets all of her clues, basically. And she's, like, been working to, like, please Thorsten because he likes people to be, like, well-mannered and, like, kiss his butt and stuff like that. But Rowan comes in and like schmoos him, and then they're both invited to dinner at Thorsten's house tomorrow. I don't know. I really like this scene too. So I'm like, I don't know which one I like. Sorry. She tells Rowan like she thought that this was like a sign because you had been super nice, and I thought you were going to be nice going forward, but obviously I was wrong. And of course he says like, you'll love me one day. So the next day he crashes her breakfast and then beats her to Thorsten's house. And of course they're in California, so Thorsten lives in Calabasas with the Kardashians. But Rowan actually had like picked out her dress for that night, and I'm like, okay. But they go in, and Thorsten gives them wine, but she doesn't drink hers, and she like sets it down, and Thorsten like immediately clocks this. And he tells them they're a lovely couple, and she says like, we're just friends, but at the same time Rowan is like, yeah, we met on an exhibition. So obviously like wires are crossed here. And then they go to do a toast, and he gives her something else to drink, but this time Thorsten drinks the wine or champagne or whatever. So she does drink this. And a butler comes in named David, and he seems like super weird. He's really like big, like stocky, but like doesn't talk. And she keeps looking at Rowan, wondering if he's figured out like anything yet, but she's not sure, and she's like starting to regret that he like came along. And she keeps trying to tell Rowan through facial expressions that like something is not right. So she's like, don't eat the food, but he's not taking a hint. She's also trying to tell Rowan that she thinks David is lobotomized, and she's like, lobotomy. And he's like, you love me, across the table. Like, so annoying. So, Thorsten is still watching Sloane, and so she pretends to take a drink this time, and Rowan is like becoming lethargic. So obviously there's something in these drinks, and it's drugging Rowan because Rowan is oblivious. And Rowan tells her that she's so pretty, and she always looks pretty. He says that his brother called him an idiot for taking a vow of abstinence for a girl who doesn't want him. And then their main dish comes out, which is like, what's it? Beef something?
Beef.
It's a salad with beef, allegedly. And Rowan is like, yes, because he's a chef. So he's like, he is eating. And she's like, Rowan, no. And he eats the salad, and he's like, it's fantastic. Eats another bite. Thorsten is beaming, and Rowan passes out. And so then she looks at Rowan, and she's like, yeah, because you have rare human steak hanging out of your mouth. And then she looks at Thorsten, and Thorsten realizes, well, you're not drugged. So she like knocks her drink over and is like, basically like, surprise. So Rowan wakes up and he hears music and screams. And Sloane is like, they're still in the dining room. She is straddling Thorsten, and she has gouged out both his eyes. And Rowan immediately vomits. And she says, David freaks her out, like he's harmless, but he's like in the kitchen eating. And Rowan's confused, and she tells him, that's not food that you ate. It was a person. And he just throws up everywhere. And she's like, as he's throwing up, she's like, you were just shuffling it in. You couldn't get enough. She says, do you know it was a rump roast? She said, I had to dig human ass out of your mouth. And he's like, oh God, like, oh my God. And he starts to remember, and then he also remembers what he said to her. And so Thorsten groans, and he realizes that she's been weaving an orb out of his skin. And she's like tying a web of like flesh above him. I don't know. It's gross. Like, I don't know. And she's like, basically, so the web is like a map, and it's like a topographic map, which are maps that have like layers. And she's like explaining all the, yeah, it's big brain. My little brain can't handle the big brain. But anyways, pieces of his skin represent the people he killed. So like, skin from his bicep is for B, which is for Bennett. How anybody is going to put this together, I don't know who else can figure this out. Like, I don't know that anybody else can figure this out. But whatever, go off, Sloane. But anyways, she's like assuming that Rowan thinks she's crazy, but he actually thinks she's beautiful. So Thorsten is like begging for David, and she says, she tells Thorsten, like, you remind me of someone. And she says, like, he reminds her of someone who abused her and was dark and depraved. A teacher who basically, like, made promises to get her to great heights and, like, took advantage of her. And basically because she didn't have parents who paid attention to her, like, no one noticed. But the price that she wouldn't pay was Lark. So, essentially, it seems like her and Lark met in college. And we learned later they went to like an art institute. And so she found out that the same thing that's happening to her was happening to Lark. And she basically promised then and there to kill everyone like him, and starting with him. So she stabs Thorsten in the stomach and, basically kills him. And Rowan grabs her and is like, are you okay? And she's like, I'm okay. And he says he's okay too. And she says, she starts saying, like, it's really bad. And she's talking about David. She's like, it's really bad. He's just in there, like, eating. He was eating a sausage. So they go to the kitchen, and David's just eating ice cream. And they're like, oh, okay. Like, Rowan's like, oh, good. Like, it's just cookies and cream ice cream, right? Fair warning. If you like ice cream or cookies and cream ice cream. No, that's the only warning you're getting. So Rowan asked her, like, okay, so how did you figure out Thorsten? And she basically says, like, Thorsten was from England originally and, like, had been doing this. And he went quiet for a while, but then, like, she did some research and blah, 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 blah. So she goes over to David and she's like, okay, David, like, that's enough eating. And she takes the carton and starts reading. And she's like, huh, very interesting. And Rowan's like, please don't. And she's like, huh, milk, something else. And then she says, semen, milked in March. And Rowan throws up everywhere. Very interesting.
My jaw was on the floor.
That is gross. Gross. And it's the fact that it says milked.
Right?
Like, what? Oh, dear God. So, I mean, like, David's loving it. He's been eating this stuff. So she tells Rowan, like, because she won this time, she has, like, a victory request for him, and she wants him to hire David. And he's like, absolutely the fuck not. Like, she's like, how? He's like, how? First of all, I'm in Boston. This is California. How am I supposed to get this lobotomized man to Boston without any questions or anything like that? She's like, I don't know, like, drop him off at a hospital and then, like, reach out to take care of him. I don't know. But she, like, begs, and so Rowan agrees, and they clean up the house. And as they're leaving, Sloane admits that she lied about being in Boston for a meeting and says that, and basically says, see you next year. And Rowan wants to tell her that he lied too, but he doesn't get the chance.
So, one of my favorite quotes in the book was when they were cleaning out this, she said, I think we're officially best friends now. And he said, oh yeah? Do you want to go do karate in the garage?
Oh,
and I'm like,
yes.
I love the Step Brothers reference.
Yes, it's so funny. And that comes back later too. So, I don't know. It's such a good dialogue in this. So we go to Sloane, and Lark is like, she's like on FaceTime or something with Lark, and Lark is like, more boob, more cowbell, more boob. Anyways. But so Sloane's nervous because it's been almost 8 months since she last saw Rowan. And, like, they have been, like, talking, texting nonstop. But then for the last 2 months, they really haven't because he's working on opening a second restaurant. And Rowan has asked her to join him at a gala. And Lark is, like, you know, reassuring her. She's like, he could have taken anyone. So, like, obviously he wants you to be there. So, basically, this is a favor for him because she asked him to take David, which he did. So she gets, she's like coming down on the elevator, and he texts her saying, like, I'm the pretty boy in the black suit as she's getting off the elevator. And she's like, apparently, like, whatever. But he does look really good, and they hug, and he kisses her neck. And Sloane says, you know, like, we could have just taken an Uber because he got like a limo or some nice car. And he's like, we're not driving a Honda Accord, to this gala when I have the prettiest girl of the, like, event there or whatever. And she's like, what's wrong with the Honda Accord? I drive one. And he says, no, you don't. You drive a BMW. And by the way, your oil has needed change for, like, the last 3 months. And he's basically like, you know, I wanted to splurge and I want to have a fun night with my best friend. And, like, her heart leaps. And he tells her he's been stressed out at work lately. And she can kind of tell that. But he says, like, David actually is a really good helper. And, like, he lives in a group home now. And they, like, bring him to and from work. And she can actually see, like, he looks stressed, and she tells him, like, well, you know, if nothing else helps, I know what will. She says, a beef salad with homemade Dijon mustard and cookies and cream ice cream. He's like, Sloane, I swear to God, like, shut up. Shut up. So he's like, I haven't been able to eat ice cream since that day. And he reassures her that, like, they get there, and, you know, Sloane's kind of, like, socially awkward. So, like, he reassures her through the whole night, like, that she's not alone, you know, all this stuff. And she realizes, like, she has feelings for him, and she wants more, even if she doesn't think she deserves it. So she goes up to him, and she's like, will you dance with me? So they dance, and he nuzzles her ear, and he's like, you want to have real fun? And he points out a man, like a target, and she panics because she feels like she's gotten this all wrong. Because she didn't think, when he said, like, do you want to have fun, that he meant a murder. Like, she thought this was, like, something else. And he looks at her, and he realizes that she didn't think that. And he's like, you still came? And he realizes, like, oh, you like me. You like me. You like me a lot. Anyways. So he almost kisses her, but his phone rings, of course. And something in the restaurant has, like, exploded. And she says, like, you know, I can come with you, but he's like, I don't want you there. It's dangerous. He's like, I'm so sorry. And as, like, they separate and leave, she texts and says, like, are we still good for August? And he says, yes. And she's like, okay, I'm just going to, like, try again and, like, tell my feelings or whatever then. So we jump ahead 4 months and we're with Sloane and they are doing like their next competition, Target, whatever. And Sloane thinks like Rowan's already won, but he says he hasn't. And this one's kind of interesting. I like all the kills, honestly. I'm the first one was really good, but because he was kind of funny, but they all are. So they're like approaching this like house in the middle of nowhere. And they hear like a chainsaw and like cries. And she's basically like, if Rowan ends up winning, she wants something from him. And he says like, okay, you can have one eye, but I want this guy to see like what's done to him. And he tells her to be careful because like this guy that they're after, his name is Harvey, and he's a real big guy. And they like basically rock, paper, scissors, like which way they're going to go in. And so she loses. So she's like, great, I'll go in the front. And he's like, no, let's do it again. And she's like, I lost. Like, no, I'm going in the front. So she starts sneaking up and it's like dead quiet. And the first thing she sees is a dead woman in a recliner. And it's Mama Mead. And it's an old lady in a recliner. Her dentures are still in. And she's basically like, you know, most serial killers have like twisted relationships with their mom. And normally their moms are a little messed up. So she assumes this lady was probably like fucked up too. So she's like wandering through the house and it's like dead quiet. And she's worried because like she don't hear anything. But she finally finds this room and it's filled with monitors and cameras. And she sees like a room with a dismembered body. She sees Rowan like in the living room and she sees Harvey heading down a hall. So she runs out screaming Rowan and immediately runs into Harvey's boot. Like, come on, girl, you gotta be smarter than that. So we're still with Sloane and she is like rolling down a hill, she thinks. And Harvey literally like yanks her by her hair and he drags and throws her into his cellar. And in there is another woman who's crying. She's naked. And she's like, he killed Adam. And she's like, yeah, he killed Adam. But he's an idiot because she still has her phone. And so she pulls it out and Rowan's looking for her. And he's like, he's coming. And like her shoulder is dislocated. She's messed up. So she gives the girl her shirt. And Rowan has to like cut down the door with an axe. And the like cellar stairs are gone. So he like reaches in there trying to grab her. And he's like, jump. But she can't. Like her shoulder's all messed up. So he's pissed. And the girl starts panicking. Her name is Autumn. And they're like, just stay here because like he'll assume that you escaped. And like, just be quiet. Like he'll think you're gone. So she gets out. He's like looking all over her. And he's like, I can't lose you. And so she's like, then kiss me. And he does. And it is fireworks. And then they hear Autumn running with Harvey chasing her with a chainsaw. Like, oh, dear God. Girl, you had one task. So Rowan's like, I'm going to kill him. So he goes to kill Harvey. And she says, like, don't forget you promised me a turn. But Sloane starts walking back towards the house. So Autumn's like got a shirt on and she's basically like, you know, just find your way home. So she's like, she's got a long walk, but she'll be good. So she goes in the house and Rowan, like something happens and they end up like getting Harvey like chained down or whatever. So she goes in the house and gets his mom's dead corpse. So Harvey is like he's not passed out, but he's tied up. So she starts rubbing this dead lady up and down his body and saying like, oh, Harvey, aren't you such a good boy? And he's like, bleh, 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 bleh. This man has a heart attack and dies. She's like, that's freaking disappointing. Like, what the hell? And
how rude of you, Harvey.
I know. Dear God. Like, the lady's dentures fall out and everything while she's doing it. And so then her and Rowan are like joking because he's like, should we do CPR? And he's like, I'm not giving him mouth to mouth. And they like kiss again. And so Rowan tells her they're going to go to Nebraska because they're going to see his brother Theon because he's a doctor and she needs one. So we switch over to Rowan and Sloane is sleeping on him as they're driving to Nebraska. She wakes up panicked because she literally has a boot mark on her face from Harvey. And she's like, what if I have to go pee? Like, I can't use the bathroom. And he's like, squat outside, like whatever. But she's worried. She's like, what if I need surgery? And asks like, does his brother know about their games and what they do? And Rowan says yes. And she's like, but he's a doctor. He took an oath. That's what Josh always said. You took an oath. Like, whatever. So she asks like, okay, well, she asks Rowan like how he got into this line of work. And he says, well, you know, my dad was like our first kill. And he says, I thought like I would regret it, but I didn't. And then the next person I met that was like him, I realized that I could keep doing this because there was always going to be a worse person. So Rowan helps her like get her shirt off, which is super painful because her shoulder's dislocated. And he notices her nipples are pierced. And he freezes because when he met her in the cage and she showered and they went to lunch, she didn't have no bra on. And he's like, you didn't have those piercings back then. So what's up? And he's like, okay. He's like, okay, I know those wasn't there. And she says, something got your attention? And like, as they're driving, he's like super distracted. He's like, yeah, we're going to have a conversation about that, but I got to get you some help first. And then we're going to talk about your nipples. So When they get to his brother's house, they get attacked by this crazy lady with crutches. So she comes out and starts beating Rowan with the crutches and attacking him, and is like, did you do this to her? Then Rowan takes her crutch and she pulls out a knife, and Sloane's like, whoa, hold on. It's a misunderstanding. And she's like, who are you? And so Sloane is trying to reason with her. And so the lady, she asks the lady, what is your name? And she's like, I'm Rose. Who are you? She's like, I'm Sloane. And Sloane's like, he didn't do this to me. And she's like, yeah, right. This is your abuser, all this stuff, whatever. And she's like, well, then who is this man to you? And she's like, my man guy friend. And Rowan laughs. And Sloane tells her, Rowan is Theon's brother. They're at his house. So Rose calls Theon and is like, your brother stole my crutch. And she calls him a crutch stealing, jackass or something. I don't know. And Rowan's like, yeah, because you were beating me with it. And so she says, well, Theon wants you to confirm it's you by saying your childhood nickname. And Rowan's like, hell no. And she's like, good, then I can knife you in the balls. And Rowan says, try it. And Sloane's like, look, guys, I'm injured. I need this to go. And he's like, fine. My child nickname was Shit Flicker. And everyone laughs. He can hear Theon laugh on the phone. And Theon's like, I'll be there in 15 minutes. And Rowan is like, you never told us who you were. And she's like, maybe I'm his girl chick. So Sloane teases Rowan and she's like, okay, whose shit were you flicking? Was it yours? Was it somebody else's? And he says, you're lucky that you're injured. And she's like, why? And then he chokes her and says, because I'd spank you and teach you a lesson about wanting. Ooh. And I was like, oh, we're getting somewhere. All right. So he can tell Sloane's turned on, and he tells her you should start practicing begging. And Rose is in the house sitting in the dark, and he's like, weird time to play spades. She's like, these are tarot cards, you want a reading? And he's like, nah, I'm good. But he says, how long have you been with my brother? And she's like, we're not together, whatever. She says, how long have you been pining? And he admits a long time. And Rose says well, you're welcome because we've got one bed. My favorite. She's like, basically there's 3 rooms in this house. I got one, Theon got one, you guys got one, and there's only one bed. And she says, so you're welcome, basically. And so she's flipping the cards, and basically she's like, so you're the one who got her in this whole boot situation. And she asks Rowan, is this some kind of game? And he has some wine, and he almost drops it because she's like, how do you know that? And she points at the card and says, it must be a game of life and death. And it has suffering and secrets and illusions. And she points to another card, and it's a tower of stone. And she's like, what does this mean to you? And he's like, I don't know. Didn't I say I didn't want to play? What's up? But she basically says, it represents something that can be taken down with one strike if it's built on an unsteady foundation. And when it comes down, it will collapse and all things will be revealed. And she says, because he's like, oh, is that what you think this boot situation was? And she's like, it could be, or it could be something that hasn't happened yet. So Theon comes in, and basically, Rowan explains everything that happened to Sloane, and but he can't stop thinking about what Rose said. So we switch over to Sloane, and Lark is holding her, singing. And this is a flashback of when Sloane killed the professor, and Lark was like, it's going to be fine. My parents will forgive us. You can come home with me. And this is when we learned that the guy that took advantage of them was the artistic director of Ashbourne Collegiate Institute. And then all of a sudden she hears someone calling her Blackbird, and that's when she kind of wakes up, and it's Rowan. She remembers everything that just happened about getting her arm fixed, and she basically is like, please, can I have a bath? I'm disgusting. So he runs her a bath, and he's like, I can get Rose. She's like, no, I want you to do it. So he slowly takes her buttons off, and he tells her I gotta get my shit together and hurry up. My buttons. He's like, I gotta hurry up and get you in the bath before I lose my shit. And she's like, does that mean I win? And he's like, honestly, I'd let you win every game. I don't care anymore. And he tells her he remembers what he said to her at Thorsten's, and she tells him that she likes being with him, and that she feels safe with him. And he's like, don't feel that way. It's not safe. I almost lost you. And Sloane says let me in. And they kiss, but she can tell he's holding back. So she's in the tub at this point, and so she pulls his hand into the tub. And not only does this girl have her nipples pierced, she's got her down below pierced too. Mm-hmm. And several piercings. And he's like, what is that? He's like, out of the tub now. And she's like, I just got in here. He's like, out of the tub now. And she's like, I thought you were going to take care of me. He's like, oh, I'm going to. So he basically makes her get on the bed, and he's like, spread your legs, and keeps telling her to do it. She's like, I'll get the bed wet. And he's like, do I look like I care? I don't care. And he's like, I've been wanting you for 4 years, and you're going to get on this bed and show me. And at this point I said, I am unwell, dear God. The accent is doing it, and I'm unwell. I'm unwell. So he like just keeps making her like open her legs, and he's like, don't hide from me. And he asked, like, when did you get it done? And so she has, like, 3 piercings. So she's like, the first one I got when I was 18, which she says, like, was because she couldn't, like, orgasm. And I'm like, that's kind of, like, young to, like, decide that. I was like, that's kind of weird. But whatever. And then she got her second one because she thought it looked like armor. And then her third one, we find out she got a few months before she met him because it made her feel more confident. And she thought that a partner might like it. And he's like, did they? And she says, I don't know because I haven't been with anyone since I've met you. And he makes her tell him that basically she only wants him. And he's like, pick your safe word now. He's like, I'm no angel. And she says, chainsaw. And he says, basically, like, be a good girl and find something to grab onto because I'm going to destroy you. So we switch over to Rowan, and he basically is like, that's exactly what he does. And she's like, they're going to hear us. And he's like, good. Maybe my brother will learn something. And I just put, whew. So that's that. So we go back to Sloane, and she cannot sleep because Rowan like tired her out and then did not remove himself, and he's like, go to bed. And she's like, how do I sleep with you inside of me? I don't know how that happened. And he is like asleep, and she's like, I thought he would like soften and like, you know, come out. No, because this is a romance novel and a smut novel. The men are always beautiful, well endowed, and perfect, whatever. So she's like, okay, like I need friction, like I need more. So she like starts, and he's like, Sloane, what you doing? And he basically like catches on. And at this time she realizes that he got the raven tattooed on his back. And she says, why would you do that? And he's like, well, number one, I can't carry around the original, like it can get messed up. And this, like, they start having sex again, and he's like, tell me why else. And she goes, because you like me? And he's like you? He's like, I don't just like you. He's like, you're brilliant, but very, like, basically, like, oblivious. And he says, like, do you think I played this game with you every year and rip my heart out every time you walk away just because I like you? He's like, I kill for you, and I have, and I do it again. I don't just like you. I die for you. And he says, you don't just like me either. And she admits it, and that scares her. And this time when he goes to sleep, like, she gets up and gets dressed because it is morning time, ladies and gents. And she goes out, and Rose is at the table, and she apologizes, and Rose is like, for what? And she's like, you know, the noise. And, like, Rose is like, whatever. She goes, I slept just fine, not sure about him. And Theon comes out, like, baggy eyes, all kinds of stuff. He looks super tired. Rowan comes out and says, oh, Dr. Blueballs is fine. And he says, like, so Theon's basically like, you know, Sloane shouldn't be doing all this. Like, she's restricted. And Rowan's like, we weren't playing sports. We were having sex. And Theon's like, none of that either, basically. And so Rowan is basically like, I'm taking you home to Boston. So we fast forward a little bit. So Rowan actually takes care of her for a couple weeks and is like, you're moving in with me. So we switch over to Sloane, and she is at the restaurant, and the hostess apologizes to her, and she's like, I'm sorry, like, why? And basically she's like, you're Sloane. She says, you have a standing reservation here. And she shows her this note from Rowan that says, if anyone comes in by the name of Sloane, dark-haired, freckles, beautiful, blah, 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 blah. Table 12 is hers. It's permanently reserved for her. And the note also says she probably looks like she wants to run. Yeah. And so Sloane's here with Lark at this time because she's moved to Boston and Lark's visiting. So she goes to sit down at the table, and Lark is like super excited to meet Rowan. And she realized, she's like, this is such a Sloane table. And she's like, what? And they realize that this table is like perfect equal distances from like all the exits. So she's like, wow, he like really like, he really knows me. And Lark is like, you know, I can't wait to meet the man that you love. And Sloane's like, I didn't say I was in love. And Lark says, didn't you put a security camera in his kitchen? Like, come on now. And Rowan comes out, and he says, he tells Sloane that she looks so much better and asks, like, you know, did everything go okay? And she's like, yeah, I'm all moved into our place. And she brought the cat, and Rowan's like, our cat, our place, like, so cute. So they eat dinner, and they make plans with Lark to, like, meet her, like, do other stuff before she leaves. And then Rowan, like, is like, come on, take a walk with me. And he covers her eyes, and as they, like, approach this building, he removes them, and she realizes it's his new restaurant that he's named Butcher and Blackbird. So cute. And they go inside, and there are things that, like, represent him and his brothers, but she is everywhere. Like, he has these super large bird wings painted over, like, on the walls and stuff like that. And she can barely speak, and he starts to tease her, and she just says, I love you, Rowan. So he takes her to the kitchen and they like cook and they eat. And then he's like, oh, dessert. And she's like, I can't eat anything else. And I'm like, girl, you're the dessert. Like, what are you talking about? So he like starts to like tease her and makes her taste this creme brulee. But she cannot even think straight. He's like, what's different about it? And she's like, nothing, but like nothing special. He's like, say the first fruit that you can think of. She's like, persimmon. He's like, oh, that's really good. And then he's basically just like edging her and then like walks away. He's like, go sit on like he goes like, go find your table and sit on it. So she goes out and she finds her booth and he's like had it engraved with like Blackbird. And she's like, oh, look, like you can see outside there's a lady. And he's like, I said get on the table. And she's like, I literally just saw a woman walk by. They're going to see us. And he's like, do I look like I care? Get on the table. So we go to Rowan and it is now opening night of the second restaurant. And we learn that 3 and Coach is still having all these issues. And at this point I was like, yeah, I know what it is. And so Rowan's having a meltdown because Sloane is late. And he's like, she's never late. Oh my God, she probably ran. She's going to like leave. And like the hostess is like, it's good. Like she's fine. And then all of a sudden she walks in. So Rowan gives like a speech and he thanks Sloane a lot during it. And she tells him like she's sorry that, they were late. And basically she's like, I think that Locke and Lark hooked up, but they like hate each other. So I'm not really sure. Plug for the second book. And Rowan just thinks about how he's like still upset about what happened at Harvey's. And Sloane says, that was my fault. I made a careless mistake. And he's like, well, why did you make it? And she says, because I thought he was coming for you. And she like, this is a couple of days past that. She lets him know like the reviews have been really good for the restaurant. And he's like, okay, well, I have to go over to 3 and Coach because there's still more issues. But he's like, come and meet me later, like at 4:00 and come in the back door. Let yourself in because she's got keys. So he's there. He's like working to fix this exhaust fan. He goes and turns the power back on. And when he comes out, somebody's holding a gun to his head. And the man says, the Butcher of Boston and your orb weaver will be here shortly. And you're going to make sure she leaves or I'll kill her and make you watch. So we switch over to Sloane and she's letting herself into the restaurant. And she's been thinking like he's been really stressed out. She wants to ask him what's wrong, but like he doesn't really like to talk about work. But today felt like even more different. And so as she walks in, she can see him and like something's off. And she's like, are you okay? And he's like, no, I'm not. He's like, you need to go home. And she's like, okay, I'll get an Uber. And he's like, no, to like Raleigh, North Carolina, where she used to live. So she's shocked. And she's like, what's wrong? You said we would talk through things like normal people. He's like, well, we're not normal people. He's like, basically the restaurants are all that matters to me the most. And I need to focus. So like, go home. So she's crying and she says, I love you. And he says, you think you do, but you don't because you can't love. And she's like, fine, but first I need to know like why I'm unlovable. And he's like, because you're a psycho. So she leaves like crying, runs to the apartment, books a flight, and she calls Lark and is like, hey, like, can we fly out at the same time? Like Rowan dumped me. And Lark's like, what? Like, there's no way. So they start like talking through like what happened. And it seems strange. And then Sloane's like, you know what? It is strange because Rowan said that he had told me on the way to that gala that he never wanted to be like anyone else and that the gala was on like March 10th, but the gala wasn't on March 10th or whatever day it was. And that doesn't really make any sense. And then she remembers that she has a camera. So she runs, checks it, and starts panicking, and she makes a call to Lachlan. And she says, I need you to tell me something, and I'll tell you everything I know, and you need to do it in the time it takes me to run 12 blocks. I need to know everything that you know about David Miller. Dun, dun, dun. So we jump ahead to Rowan, and David is the one who had the gun. And he is slicing Rowan's arm, trying to make him eat his own flesh, and then eats Rowan's flesh. So the whole time, like, all this stuff has been going wrong in the restaurant, it's been David. He's been tearing up the restaurant. And David is not lobotomized. He is not a mute. He's perfectly, well, he's fine. Not perfectly fine. He's messed up in the head, but he's not lobotomized. So Rowan is actually, he doesn't even care about this stuff. He's just hurt that he had to, like, hurt Sloane like that to make her leave. And David says Sloane is special for what she did for me and like what she did for her friend. So he's like researched her. He knows that she's the orb weaver. He knows that she killed like her professor for Lark. And David says like she's a beautiful monster. And I wonder if she'd do those beautiful, depraved things with me. And Rowan is like, please, like begging, like do whatever you want to me. Just please leave her alone. But Sloane comes in with David's gun. And she says, I was wondering when you finally make your move. And David says, you've been stalking me. And he says, I've been watching you too. And he tells her he shut down the security cameras. And she like acts like she's gonna shoot, and she's like, did you become friends with Thorsten? I want to call him Thurston to that. Thorsten, just to find me. And he's like, well, sort of. He basically said, like, Thorsten didn't know that he was being hunted, so he pretended to be, like, asked if he could pretend to be, like, his lobotomized servant to, like, watch him kill people, basically. And so Rowan calls her Blackbird, and, like, at this point in time, Sloane, like, flips the switch on him, and she's like, that's enough, don't call me that anymore, whatever. And she's basically like, to David, like, you know what, let's hook up, like, let's kill Rowan, let's do it. And she's like, you know, you want to go out, like, after we finish up here, whatever. And she hands him the gun, and she's like, here, take it. And so as David reaches for the gun, she, like, slices his wrist, and he reaches with his other hand, and she slices that again, and then, like, slits his throat, like, real quick. So David's down, and Rowan, like, tries to talk to her, and she just ignores him. And then Locke calls, and she's like, your brother needs some skin, like, come help him out. So Rowan's, like, begging. He's like, please let me prove that, like, what I said wasn't real. And she finally lets him get up, and, like, he grabs her, and she just cries, saying, like, I'm so sorry I was late getting here. And Rowan says that he loves her, and he's loved her for years, and that she's perfect. And he says, you might be a psycho, but you're my psycho, and I'm yours. And Sloane says, you'll have to try harder to get rid of me. And we go over to Sloane, and we jump ahead a little bit. And so they're having sex again, and they are running late. And basically, she, you know, they do their little thing. And then so they're finally leaving to go somewhere. Rowan doesn't know what they're doing. But she calls Locke, and she's like, hey, I need you to help, like, Lark move to Boston. And he's like, hell no. Like, I don't like her. I don't want to help her. But she's, you know, she's working on trying to get him to do it. And so she is taking Rowan to a surprise, which turns out to be a tattoo place. But he doesn't know what he's getting. So they, like, get him all patterned up. They do the tattoo. And it's a tattoo of a raven holding a knife. And for the first time, she has used color since she, like, decided to stop, like, drawing and everything. And Rowan's like, you use color. Like, you use color on me. Like, that, like, you know, like, you love me, basically. So we jump ahead to Rowan, and they're doing another kill. And she's, like, weaving an orb, but she's, like, using color in that now. So she's brought, like, colors back. And he's like, you know, nothing's changed. Like, you still, like, make the left eye bigger than the right eye when you gouge it out. And he's, like, stuffed something in this guy's eye socket. He's like, you know, get that out of there. So she pulls it out. And first she looks at a letter, and it says, marry Sloane if she'll let you. And then it has an engagement ring. And she turns her, and he is dropped down to one knee in the middle of this murder scene.
How romantic.
And that is really the end of those two. But we jump to an epilogue. And we get this, like, Southern Bible thumping accent. And it's a man who's standing outside of one of the restaurants watching Sloane and Rowan, and I believe Locke is with them. And he says, Rowan Kane took my brother, and I vow to take his. And I'm like, this must be Harvey's brother. So, dun, dun, dun. That is for book 2, which is out now. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can buy it. So, that is the end of Butcher and Blackbird. What did you rate?
I rated it 4 stars.
Okay.
And I just want to give a little blurb of my, or a little excerpt of my review, which I said was equally funny, spicy, romantic, and psychotic.
Absolutely. I'm rating it right now. I'm doing 4 on Goodreads, but I would probably give it a 4.5. It was just like, it was different. I think there's other books like serial killer like this, but this is the first like this that I had read, and I really enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed the audiobook. The audiobook's nice because it's like they are like tandem readings at lots of times.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
So it's not like the guy's doing the girl voice and like no, like they like even at the end it's like you were listening to like it's really nice. So I hope like is it Leather and Lark or Lark and Leather?
Leather and Lark.
Leather and Lark. So that's book 2. I hope it's like that. I'm sure there's a new narrator. But yeah, like I enjoyed it so much. I just like, I love a good serial killer thing, and they were like witty and funny. The smut was top tier. So I was like, yeah, like this is good. So yeah. Okay. Do we have other reviews?
Yes. So quick and easy, 5-star. I love these 2 psychopaths.
Same.
Yep.
Same friend.
And then our 1-star review. 1 star. Underdeveloped characters, insta-lovey, boring plot, bad writing, and awful dialogue. I love the dialogue.
The dialogue? Okay, like, is there a lot of plot? No. Like, there is, but there isn't. Like, not, like, we're here for the smut and the banter.
And the murder.
But there's definitely dialogue.
Yeah.
See, they're not a vibe reader. You must not be a vibe reader. Because we're here for vibes.
I love the banter. The banter was...
It was funny. Like,
yes.
The kills were so funny. Like, even, like, the other serial killers were funny. Like, I like them. Like, Francis is, like, you being in that wall, like, and just, like... and then if you listen to the audiobook, like, he was like, oh, shit. Like, it's so funny. Like, I was just, like, cackling while I was reading it. So, I'm sorry you didn't enjoy, but we did.
Yes. Very much.
Yes. So, this was a quick one too. So it was a short book. It was good. Like it's a nice fun one, and we need that because our next book is House of Flame and Shadow. So we are doing our third Crescent City book. So next week will be part 1, and I don't even remember if that book is broken down into parts, but it'll be half of the book, and then the week after that will be part 2. So we are jumping back into SJM world and finishing out what we have of that series so far, and then we'll be moving on to Throne of Glass, which is lengthy. But, you know, that was her first series, so, like, the books start out a little shorter. So at least the first couple should be, like, one, I don't know, we'll have to see. This should just be, like, one episode, but we'll see. But, yeah, so we're getting ready to finish that out. I can't believe we're already in July with these episodes, because this episode comes out July 8th. So, yeah, that's crazy. Wow. Yeah, but... okay, so if you are not, again, following us on TikTok or Facebook and Instagram, please make sure you do that and that you're interacting with us. We love hearing from you guys. And also, we're on YouTube, so make sure you subscribe to that and check out our website, which is booktrospective.com. And yeah, I think that's all I got.
That's all, folks.
All right. Bye. Bye.